Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Myers. I'm your host for this house hacking webinar. Thank you for joining today, listening in. If you're on YouTube channel, if you're on school, happy to have you. Can't wait to talk about this topic of house hacking, one of the best strategies in real estate investing, especially if you're just getting started. Just a quick introduction to myself. My name is Andrew Myers. Like I said, I have been in real estate for about 18 years, most of that in the commercial real estate space. And as of uh, early 2023, I became a full-time real estate broker as well as an investor. I've been investing in real estate for about 7 years now, beginning with house hacking. And now I am up to 31 doors, a combination of long-term rentals, midterm rentals, and a short-term rental as well. So I am excited to share about this strategy. It's kind of a household term these days, but I just wanted to provide my perspective and maybe a little bit of training on this topic. Let's dive into it. We're going to talk about what is house hacking. What are some of the house hacking home types? If you're going to go look for a residence, what can you be even looking for? And I provide some ideas here. House hack strategies. Part of this game is thinking about how you want to run your house hack and the different strategies that are out there for you. And I wanted to close with a few stories of house hackers that I know and that I've helped, and my own story around house hacking and how my wife and I got started. So, what is house hacking? House hacking is the housing strategy and investment strategy that involves buying a property, living in a portion of that property while renting out another portion of the property for income to another person. That other person can be an unknown tenant, it can be a friend, it can be a group of friends. Really, the opportunities are endless, and ultimately, what you're comfortable with in this strategy. Some of the benefits of house hacking. Obviously, rental income that you receive by renting a portion of the house can go towards your mortgage payment and can go towards your living expenses. Also, you can gain experience being a landlord, working with leases, working with how tenants operate and live in something that you own. Some of that tangible and intangible experience is really valuable when it comes to house hacking. And then there are tax benefits that you can realize as a house hacker, because part of your property will be designated your primary residence, and part of it will be considered an investment. And so you can combine that into a good tax strategy for your profile. Some of the challenges, there are always challenges to any real estate investing. Living in close proximity to other people, that's something to get used to if you haven't done that before. A lot of people have, and it doesn't bother them. But obviously, if they're in sharing the space, or if they are even living in your asset, you have to kind of detach from that emotional piece and realize that it's partly a rental, not just your primary residence. And just the basic challenges of landlording, property management and maintenance. It's one thing when it's your own house, but it's another thing when other people are affecting the condition of the house. And, maybe there's a clogged toilet, or there is a something going on with pests or something like that. You get that experience in being a landlord, which is valuable, that can take you to your future investing. So let's talk about some of the home types that I've seen. I'm sure this isn't the entire list out there, but first and foremost, single family homes work well that have multiple bedrooms, live in one bedroom and rent out the other bedrooms. I've talked to several people that have done this. Typically, it's a younger crowd that is comfortable with this, but some of the challenges I've heard is sometimes it's a lot of work, and it's pretty close quarters for a group of people, unrelated people, and you have to deal with 4 leases or 5 leases, and everybody is sharing a kitchen, and so there's some complexity to that, but I see it happen, and I see it work. A single family home with a mother-in-law suite that looks really well, or that works really well. And a mother-in-law suite can have a full kitchen. It can have a kitchenette, but it does work as a separate apartment within the house. A single family home with an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU. Those are very popular topics these days in densely populated cities, because they're trying to increase. They're approving the ADUs as an approved use to increase density on a single lot. So you can live in the house, rent out the ADU, or you can live in the ADU if you don't need much space and rent out the house. Either way, we would consider it house hacking. And I would like to say that an ADU can be detached out of the house, but an ADU can also be considered attached to the house. So there's a few ways to slice it there. The other popular way, most people that I talk to want to get into a house hacking situation where it's two completely separate units. So it's either a duplex, one unit you live in, you rent out the other unit, or you live in one unit and you rent out the other 2 units or 3 units. And so that's probably the most popular thing that people are looking for when it comes to house hacking. Some more creative strategies that I've thought about, the other home types, are single family house on land with tiny homes. Live in the house, rent out the tiny homes. You have to check all the zoning and make sure all the utilities are good and all that stuff. It can be complex, but it is a possibility. You have a single family house and you have an RV pad. You live in the house and you rent out the pad, let's say to people who are traveling around the country. You put it on, I think there's a website that's like Airbnb that you rent out RV pads. And so that can be a good option. That can create some income to your home. Single family home with a storage unit or a garage workshop. I've seen this before where somebody doesn't necessarily have use for a huge garage or the workshop that's on their property. So they live in the house and they rent out the storage unit or the workshop to another person. You live on a farm and you have a barn, but you don't use the barn. So you live in the farmhouse and rent out the barn for events or storage or equipment. There's so many ways to be creative in this house hacking space, and it depends on where you live and what your goals are ultimately. But hopefully this gives you some ideas of options. My favorite homes, personally, for house hacking are bi-level homes. That's how I got started. We purchased a home where you enter and you either go up or you go down. And we created a separation between the top level and the bottom level, and it had a walkout basement. And so we rented out the bottom when we lived out on the top. So it worked out very well. We got creative. It had to spend a little bit of money to manipulate the home, but it worked out perfectly. Side-by-side duplexes, that's a no-brainer. Live in one unit, rent out the other. Homes with walkout basements can always work well. You can add a kitchenette or a kitchen, check zoning, and just get creative on that. Homes with downstairs wet bars, again, easily manipulated into a kitchenette. If you're just going to do Airbnb and have short stays, a kitchenette is more than enough. Most people are used to that as an alternative to stay in hotel rooms that don't have any kitchenette. A kitchenette often works. Homes with equal bedrooms and bathrooms. A lot of times this is attractive because if you rent out a room that has its own bathroom, then you're not sharing all the spaces. And so I see this work often. So let's talk about the different strategies to think about as you're thinking about house hacking. First of all, there's 3 options in my mind. There's probably more. You can run your separate unit or separate room as a short-term rental, which means you're renting to guests for fewer than 30 days, typically on Airbnb or VRBO. The medium-term rental, also called midterm rentals, those are furnished and leased out to, let's say, traveling nurses, traveling professionals for longer than 30 days. And then lastly, long-term rental, pretty typical, is an unfurnished space leased out to tenants for typically 12 months or more. You could have a long-term tenant in an unfurnished space for 9 months or 10 months. But generally, it's a 12-month lease, and it is an unfurnished space. All of these have their own little nuances and complexities, but these are the primary ways to think about your house hacking strategy. What are you going to do? What kind of tenants are you going to have, or guests, and how much work do you want to put into the property? Short-term rentals are particularly quite active. You have to turn over guests every 3 to 7 days. Let's say there's cleaning, there's stocking, there's supplies, there's messaging the guests, all of those active activities. Medium-term rentals elongate those periods of time that you have people in there, but still there's turnover and cleaning every 30 to 90 days, let's say. So that is kind of a passive and active activity in my mind. And then long-term rental, you're basically a property manager trying to get somebody in the space, and you don't have to attend to much other than what your tenant needs and what the property needs. All of these can be super successful. So when you're thinking about the factors that go into which strategy to employ on your house hack, like I just mentioned in those 3 strategies, do you want your investment to be more passive, or do you want it to be more active? How much time do you have? Do you have kids? Do you have a busy job? All of these can factor into being more on the passive side versus the active side. Look at the local regulations. The last thing you would want to do is say, I want to run a short-term rental, and you buy a house hack and you realize the regulations and the laws are actually pretty prohibitive on short-term rental. You might have to pivot there. So just before you get into it, look at where you want to live, look at where you want to run this investment, and check the local regulations. And that includes STR laws and regulations, zoning, HOA, or neighborhood associations. They may have restrictions on the various strategies that you are considering. Got to look at competition saturation. Do your research around how many short-term rentals are in an area, how many midterm rentals are in an area. You can do that by checking the platforms. You can do that by talking to other operators in the area and their experiences. There's a lot of ways to research that and to consider that. What are the income and expenses that you need to hit in order to have this be a solvent operation? So look at the income for all 3 strategies, for short-term, midterm, and long-term. And then what are the expenses involved? A long-term tenant, you're not going to get as much income, but you're also not going to have as many recurring expenses that you might have on a short-term rental. So you have to run all of those numbers. What are the amenities that you want to provide or can provide in those units? Is it going to be a full kitchen? Is it going to be a kitchenette? Is it just going to be a microwave? What are you gonna provide? Washer and dryer? Are you going to provide your own entrance? All those nuances of a particular space, you need to kind of figure out what you want and then go look for it. And also tie those amenities to the strategy that you're going to employ, and try to figure out what the best makeup and the best type of property you're looking for matches that strategy. Look at the amenities around the neighborhood in the area. Certainly school systems, retail, jobs. Certainly if you're looking to do a midterm strategy, look to see where the hospitals are, the universities, the large business campuses, those types of things play into your strategy and play into where you might live and invest. What kind of improvements and furnishings do you need to do to provide a great experience, either for a tenant or a guest? If you don't want to get into the design of things and the furnishings, then I would suggest don't do midterm rental and short-term rental. There are certain expectations that have to be met in order to run a good investment, a good short-term rental or a good midterm rental. And what kind of improvements are you going to have to make? Are you going to have to update that bathroom or create a kitchen? Those are all things to consider, not only on the financial side, but also just on the strategy side. So let me finish this up. I'll give you three scenarios. I had a client who was looking for a house hack. He was 24 years old, just starting out. This was his first home. Fortunate to him, he had a great stable job, and he was able to put 3% down payment on this. So he purchased a 2-bedroom condo for $285,000 here in the Denver area. And his strategy was simply, this has been a concept for decades, is you buy a 2-bedroom condo and you rent out the second bedroom to a friend. And so I think his friend was paying him $800, and his mortgage was $1,750. So his own mortgage expense was $950. Plus he had to pay taxes and insurance and pay for utilities and the HOA and all that. But his living expenses, I think, actually dropped from where he was before when he was renting. So that $800 was really a subsidy that he used to live cheaper than he would before. So it was a very successful way to house hack for a young guy, and I think it's working out very well for him. Let's see. So the second story I have is Corinne and Cameron. This is a brother and sister, first-time investors, house hack. Since they were first-time home buyers and investors, they were able to put 5% down on a duplex. So they purchased this duplex for $655,000. This is in Lakewood, Colorado. Their strategy was to live, if you can see in the picture, live on the right side, which was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and then rent out the other side, which is a 4-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom half duplex. And so their mortgage was $3,900. And this is reminder, this is a time of high interest rates. And so their mortgage was $3,900, and their income on the second unit is $2,900. And I would say it ranges, depending on the year, from $2,700 to $2,900. So if you subtract that, Corinne, who is living on the right side, the sister of the two, they are paying a mortgage expense of $1,000, plus taxes, utilities, and insurance, of course. But again, that second unit income is subsidizing the entire mortgage expense. So, and Corinne does have an option, since she lives alone. Could she also rent out the second bedroom for additional income? I know that's a consideration that she has thought about, and maybe that's a reality in the future. So that's just a good representation of the duplex strategy. And they could also think about, if they wanted to, do a furnished rental, and possibly do midterm and maybe bump that income up to $3,400 or $3,500. So lots of options and opportunities with this type of property and strategy. I'll end on my own story. In 2017, my wife and I had 2 kids at the time. We were first-time home buyers, and I will say I was 35 years old at that time. And so I didn't buy my first house until 35. I wish that was earlier, but that's just how these things shook out. And we put 5% down on this house. We purchased this with like I mentioned before, it was a bi-level home, which I would call a mother-in-law suite because it was easily set up to be separated for, let's say, a mother-in-law to live downstairs with its own entrance, walkout basement, and also hookups for washer and dryer. So we purchased in 2017 here in Colorado 434, and we decided to use the downstairs unit as a short-term rental. And so we did an Airbnb VRBO for 2 years downstairs while we lived upstairs. And yes, we were married and had 2 kids and had an Airbnb below us. So there were a lot of incidents of us texting our guests saying, we're sorry our son jumped off the couch and created a large noise. Or we're sorry that our 6-month-old was crying most of the night. Somehow we got through it. It was all worth it. That Airbnb paid our mortgage for 2 years. And as you can see, our mortgage payment was pretty low. We bought at a good time. And we were averaging about $2,000 in income per month. So that means our mortgage expense at the end of the day was close to zero. We did, of course, have all the other expenses, but it did pay our mortgage. And so we were entirely grateful. Let me also mention that this one house, we were able to take a HELOC out on it. And I used that money to purchase 2 more rental properties and also use money from that HELOC to purchase our subsequent primary home. And then after we moved out of this became a long-term rental for another 2 years. It was cash flow. It was doing great. And then when I decided to go into full-time real estate, we sold that. And that nest egg of equity was our ability for me to quit my job and start building my businesses. So this one house was a true blessing. And I always tell people, especially younger people, just get into your first place, even if it's a house hack, get that experience, and you never know where that first primary home house hack is going to take you, because it took us really far, further than we ever expected. So that's my piece of wisdom for the day. So let me finish up with a few words to the wise here. In an expensive market like we're in right now in 2024 in Denver, don't expect a cash flow. I hear a lot of people trying to get their house hack properties to cash flow. Rather, look at the income that you receive on these properties as a subsidy to your living expenses. You're getting a credit. You're getting basically a reduction in your living expenses. That's how you should look at it in my book, just mentally, so you can accept that. And when you're underwriting properties, that you want to get the largest subsidy, change that, reframe that from getting cash flowing to getting the largest subsidy that you can get when you're analyzing properties. Get creative. Go see a lot of homes if you're thinking about it. Start thinking about, can you separate a bi-level? Can you create a second entrance? Can you add washer and dryer to the downstairs or the upstairs, which is what we had to do in our first place, is add another set of washer and dryer up and down. Can you rent it out per room, the other unit? Does it have an RV pad? Can you put it, if it has an RV, can you put a Airstream out there and rent that out? There's so many possibilities. Just get really creative. Analyze the property. Analyze the property as if you're planning to move out in a couple of years and rent out that entire property. So there you're looking at you're thinking about the location, the rentability, the amenities in the area. It's not just for you. If this is going to be a long-term endeavor, think about this place as if you were also moving out, and this would be a place that you would buy just as a pure rental. So always think about that, because that's going to be your exit plan in the future. And take these first steps. Understand that your financing options, that's number one. Make sure that you talk to an investor friendly lender who understands what you're trying to do with house hacking. I have plenty of those contacts. They're out there, and they can give you all the options that you need, especially if you're a first time home buyer. There are a lot of programs that can help you even with house hacking strategies. Do a lot of market analysis around the area you want to live, then determine what strategy that area might support best when it comes to your house hack. Compare rents for long-term, midterm, and short-term. You might pivot a couple years down the road. So you want to kind of see how healthy that area and that property might be for a long-term rental, a midterm rental, or a short-term rental in that area. Attend investor meetups to start talking to fellow house hackers. I know in Denver, there's a lot of house hacking groups. And a lot of people that I surround myself with are currently house hacking or have house hacked in the past. And that's how they got into more investing. That was their first way to get into it. Tons of people out there that have this experience, and just start talking to them about their experience. Work with an investor-friendly agent who has experience as a house hacker. Might be a little bit of a shameless plug here, but anybody I would suggest, if you want to be a house hacker, please find an agent who can help you run the numbers, who knows what they're looking for when they help you go see houses, who know the investor-friendly lenders, who have all those contacts and that advice, and who has done it and walked that walk before you. It's going to make your life 10 times easier, and it's really going to help you out. So that is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you for spending the time. Get out there. If you have any questions, contact me. There's my Instagram. You can contact me, follow me. Anything you need, happy to talk more about house hacking and its benefits. And we'll see you out there. Go get it.